Hiya! Are you sitting comfortably? I'm not going to tell you a story, but I may be going to take you back into your childhood. Today's Thursday Thoughts are leaning into the esoteric because I have become aware that there is a spiritual awakening in myself, but it's actually been happening all my life. And this is where I want to take you back into your childhood, because I just want to tell you about a few real indicators that I haven't missed, but I really haven't been following my true purpose, and the universe has kept doing this to me, and I still haven't paid any attention. I'm just having too much fun on earth, clearly. So when I was a little girl and I used to walk to school, and people had flowers and plants in their front garden, I would touch all the plants and say hello and good morning to them and hold their leaves, and I was aware instinctively that different plants have different vibrations and feel differently. And I just thought everybody did that, and I thought everybody was aware of that. And I was quite a young child. I mean, we're talking about junior school, primary school. And then I used to talk to the plants, and as I got older, I think we're sort of maybe in the 1970s, the media really ribbed King Charles when he was Prince Charles, and they said, you know, oh, he's nutty because he talks to his plants. And I was thinking, I remember I was in the living room and my mum was there. I looked at my mum and I was thinking, doesn't everybody do that? Oh, so then I learnt not to do it, and I learnt not to tell people that I did that. And then also when I was a child, maybe I was even younger, may have been about, I don't know, under 5 years old maybe, because in my memory, I just remember having this absolute tantrum paddy, which I wasn't really prone to as a child. So I must have been very young and not being able to communicate properly. And my dad was going, it was dark, but it was very early. It was probably about sort of, I don't know, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and I'd been put to bed. So, and my dad went out, and he went out to look for his uncle Eric, who I really liked. But I was screaming at my father, my dad, and I was saying, don't go out, because, you know, he's already dead. Anyway, off my dad went. My mum put me to bed and she scolded me. That was a really wicked thing to say, you know, and I was thinking, why is it wicked to tell the truth? And I've always been the sort of person that just tells my truth, and I don't hide my truth very, you know, diplomacy is not my middle name. But I think that goes back to childhood, and I wonder if you can relate to me there, because I knew that my great uncle was dead. And I was trying to tell my parents that. But of course, as a child, I wouldn't have known that that wasn't the thing to do. To just know things is not the thing to do. So then fast forward, you know, a bit more. Teenage years, going out, drinking too much alcohol, falling in love, that sort of thing. That's all that, lovely. But then what happened is I had my first, what I would call, real alignment from the universe. So I want to know, you know, I want you to think about your childhood and think you probably had those experiences. Maybe you were very young, maybe you were slightly older, but you can remember having a sense of clairsentience or clairvoyance, or just I don't know what the surname of the Claire is, where you just know, the sense of knowing, and you don't know how you know. So, you know, at school, for example, and I know my son was caught out like this in maths, because he could do his maths, but he couldn't show how he worked it out because he just knew the answer. And I think I was like that. I didn't struggle with the maths. I struggled with explaining how I'd got the answer, and I was thinking, I always thought, this school system, you know, it's making everything so. Why is it making everything so complicated? And I know that my son felt like, you know, everything in life was there to try and show him up and trip him up and make him feel bad. And actually that wasn't the case. It's just that what we'd been doing is closing ourselves down. So anyway, in my mid-20s, I had been working in London in the film industry, so I was getting up in the dark, getting on train, going on the underground in the dark. In those days, edit suites were really dark, sitting in an edit suite, really dark, commuting home again. And one winter, I didn't see the light of day, and I got SAD syndrome. And that, when we're suffering, whether it's physical, mental or emotional pain, it's often if it's physical pain, you know, it's a message and it's coming through our bodies. And if it's emotional pain or psychological pain, we should listen to ourselves, because one of the harmful things is us trying to squish into society's norms and behave in a way that actually is quite distressing. And I think it's becoming more distressing to more people. So as we see the rise of ADHD, we see the rise of all sorts of mental health problems, we need to be looking at them as a healing journey rather than as something wrong with the person. It certainly is a dis-ease, but the dis-ease is a message, and it's telling us that our environment is wrong, that we're, you know, we feel like we're in the wrong time and place. And that happened to me, and I was, because I wasn't getting sunlight, you know. But although I kind of knew that, I didn't apply it straight away because of the pressure and the ego saying, I want to work in the film industry, and, you know, I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and actually not listening to my body at all. So I want you to sort of think about, oh yes, there have been times in your life when that's happened. And maybe just, yeah, I mean, there's a modern sort of modern zeitgeist of journaling, which is really useful, actually. I have my ego has blocked to journaling because we used to have to do it at school. It's not about our feelings, but about what have we seen on the way to school. And I couldn't mention, oh, I saw all these plants I was talking to. I couldn't say things like that. So I had to deny myself from a very early age, and I think this is resonating with you. So I did change my career, and I studied aromatherapy and massage, and I was very, very lucky because an amazing woman who was a retired nurse called Mrs. Brooks taught me massage on a Saturday morning, therapeutic massage at the local college. And she also taught us Reiki, and she was like, you don't really need to go on a Reiki course. I went all the way to Japan to do this, but actually, and she was just spreading this information about energy healing. And so effleurage of the body is at skin level. And she would just say, rise, you bring your hands up just an inch, and now feel, and does it feel different? And again, that's not Reiki, by the way, but she would also have us moving and dancing and moving our hips as we massage, so that we didn't take on anyone's illness into our body. But during those years, I became more and more sensitive. So often, if I had a pre-sensitivity or precondition in my DNA, I would be picking up people's illnesses and aches and pains. But a rather amazing thing happened. Oh, and there's a tip that I was told by Fred Steele, who was an acupuncturist in Bedford, absolutely wonderful guy. He said, right, here's 2 really simple tips. If that's you, if you're doing energy work with other people in any way, or you're doing massage or therapies, and you know, this includes facials and beauty therapies, I guess even hairdressers, you know, you're really taking that energy from people. Run your wrists under cold water in between every client. And he did encourage us to wear white, to wear a white beautician's or clinical coat, or, you know, I've noticed now that scrubs in hospitals aren't white, but nurses used to always have big white aprons on. There's a reason, because white reflects light. So it reflects energy, and you want to be reflecting energy and not taking it in from sick people. So they're two things that, you know, you could listen to that and go, oh, that's bonkers. And then you could listen to it and go, well, of course it's not, because that's how frequencies work. And metaphysicists, you know, and physicists know now and are really beginning to understand. Scientists are sort of catching up with this intuitive knowing, in the sense that they're beginning to prove and know and affirm that we are molecules vibrating on a frequency, a range of frequencies, and our range of frequencies, because, you know, we're quite solid, but we're not as solid as that wooden table, which is denser, and the molecules are moving slower and more dense. So everything on Earth is just molecules vibrating in a range of Earth frequencies. I didn't know how to articulate that when all these things happened to me. Now we're going to go even deeper. So deeper into the esoteric experiences that I want you to cast your mind back to think, did you have experiences like this? So I was a therapist, I was an aromatherapist, and I had referrals from the Luton Industrial Drug Helpline, and we are talking in the early 90s. And I had referrals from the police, from people who were, you know, for policemen and women to come to me for relaxation and therapists, because obviously that was a very stressful job. I don't know if HR departments look after people in the same way as they did then. But I had a little room with my friend Shirley Smythe, who was a reflexologist, and she was a very healing person. But she came into work one day and she brought a leaflet in, and it said National Federation of Spiritual Healers, and she said, oh, I'm going to do that, you should think of doing this. And I thought, she's gone mad. I've never heard of anything like it. I just had not heard of anything like it. But I loved Shirley and I loved her energy, and I thought we had this sort of healing space really, really strongly because of her energy. And I think for years I felt that everything that came into that room was Shirley pulling it in. And I'll give you one example. Was, you know, we shared the room, it's a tiny room, we shared the room, and we both had other jobs. And she popped in one morning and she brought a crystal elixir remedy in. And again, I was like, crystal elixir remedies, what is going on here? And she said, oh, there's a man, he's going to pop in. And she described him to me, and she said, but I've got to go to work and this is for him. And off she went. So I assumed that he was one of her customers, clients that had come for reflexology or whatnot, and he'd seen Shirley and she'd made this thing for him. So this man appeared in the afternoon to this description, so I recognised him. And so I asked him, you know, can I help you? Professional meet and greet, as it were. And got talking, and he was talking about his different ailments and whatnot. And I thought, and I said, oh, actually, I've got just the thing here for you. And I gave him this remedy, and he put some money on the table. And I still just assumed that he was Shirley's client and he was expecting this remedy. And so later in the day, I saw Shirley that evening, and she said, oh no, I've never seen him before. I just had this dream before I woke up this morning, and I knew he was coming, and I knew this is what he needed. And again, I was still in the realms of disbelief around this kind of clairaudience, clairsentient, or how she had known in her dreaming. So I'm asking you, are there times in your life where just before waking, you have seen something, you have experienced something, and then during the day, you have had a feeling of déjà vu because that something has happened? I bet you have, because you wouldn't be here listening to me if you hadn't. So here's another thing. So we had this beautiful room, and I would work on people, and I would use a guided visualization. So I would be massaging people, and I said to this woman, and I took her down, and she went down onto the beach, and she went into the sea, and she was very relaxed, and we went deeper and deeper in. And the visualization correlated with me working on knots and stresses, you know, in different parts of her body. And that's how it should work, rather. That's how it normally worked. But this particular day, I just did some effleurage again. And I'd taken her down into the deep sea. And then it was as if something literally elbowed me out of the way. I was like, what? What's going on? And I stepped back and I stood at the corner of the room and I watched, and there were light, I would say light beings, that makes it sound like they were a bit, you know, ETs or something, and it wasn't. There was just these forms of light, as if there was these light beings working on this person. And there was a lot of coloured sort of balls of light in the room. And I was just mesmerised and feeling, wow, what's going on? Wow, okay. And then it sort of faded away, and I suddenly checked my watch and realised she had a school run to do. Oh gosh, I sort of ran back, started massaging her and bringing her up from the deep sea. And when she came back to the room, she said to me, wow, that was the most amazing treatment I've ever had. That was the most amazing massage I've ever had. And because of my ego, and also because I hadn't understood what had happened, I said, oh, thank you very much. I'll see you next week. I'll own that. I still thought the magic around this room was because of my friend Shirley. And I didn't really, I sort of digested that. So wind on a couple of years, and I'd had a pelvic inflammatory infection. And I'd been rather naughty, because in those days the doctors used to come to see you when you were bedridden. So the doctor would come out and said, you know, you need to be in hospital, because he'd taken my vitals and what have you. And I didn't want to go to the hospital. And I said, no, I'm not going to the hospital. And I remembered this occasion in the room with the lights. So I laid down on my bed, face up, and I called them in. I called the beings into the room. I said, look, I need some light healing. I need some healing. And I didn't see light beings that time, but I did see the balls of light again, the different balls of coloured light. And so in my pelvic inflammatory area, imagine there was all colours of light going in, and then a white light. And then my temperature went down, everything was, you know, I was fine. And I sort of accepted these things. Now, I was quite old, I mean, I was in my late 20s, but I want you to think about times where maybe that's happened to you and you've seen something and you thought, oh, is that a sunlight? Is that a reflection? Or maybe you've consciously called something in. Maybe you go to church and you've seen this happen. Maybe you've had an experience where you just maybe thought you were dreaming or hallucinating. And talking of dreaming and hallucinating, actually, I did know I was seriously ill with the pelvic inflammatory infection, because in a fevered state I saw my brother, who was dead, by the way. He died when he was 21 and I was 19, and I saw him in the room. And I was so happy to see him, and I just assumed that he'd come to get me because I knew I had a high fever and I wasn't very well, and I just assumed, you know, that he'd come to get me, and I was so pleased. And I got out of bed and stood up and went to go with him. And then I just found myself walking up and down in my bedroom with a you know, freezing cold, sweat on, and feeling very hurt and abandoned and isolated. And then I thought, oh, I had a fever, it must be hallucinating. So I never told anyone this. And then a couple of years later, again, I wasn't feeling very, very well, and I wanted to find an acupuncturist. I was in Lincolnshire, and I wanted to find an acupuncturist, and I went in the health food shop, and I went in the, healing centre. The health centre wasn't open and things like that. I couldn't find an acupuncturist, but everybody kept giving me the little business card, because we didn't have mobile phones in those days or internet. Everybody kept giving me this little business card of this woman who was a clairvoyant, and I was going, I don't want to see a clairvoyant. I need an acupuncture, because I don't feel very well. So after I'd collected at least 3 of these cards, I thought, okay, well, let's give it a go. And I went off to see this woman. Now, she read tarot cards, and she said something to me then. She said, you were estranged from your 3 sisters at birth. And I was like, no, I wasn't. I've lost my brother because he died. And she kept saying, shh, no, not your brother. You've lost, 3 siblings when you were born. You were taken away from them. And I said, no, I wasn't. Well, I was adopted, and I only found out 2 years ago that I have 3 half-sisters. I actually have 4 half-sisters, but that's another story. So I didn't know, that this woman was telling me the truth. I was very sceptical. I thought, oh, she's just reading tarot cards and, telling me rubbish. So, but then she got out a crystal ball, and I thought, oh no, like, what is going on here? Fairground fortune telling or whatnot. And she looked in her crystal ball and she started to describe my bedroom, photographs that I had taken, that I had hanging on the wall. And she was saying, oh, I see these photographs. Oh, you're in a bedroom. Oh. And then she said, you should have gone to hospital. You were really not very well. And then she said, oh, yes, you saw your brother. He came to tell you you'd be okay. He didn't come to take you. You weren't dying. Oh my God, I could hear him. He did say you never did listen to him. And I thought, how could she have known that? How could she possibly have known that? Because I had thought I was hallucinating from a fever, and I hadn't therefore told anyone about this visitation. So I'm inviting you today to think about times in your life where those coincidences have happened, or where you have felt the presence of people who have passed away, and just sit in those memories for a moment and wonder what message they were trying to give you, because I clearly wasn't listening to my brother, and I clearly didn't love him, bless him. So I would invite you to do that for some time today as well. Now, forward again, another little story. So you can see these things keep happening, and it builds up a pattern. Are you thinking about your own life now? Think about when these things happen. So, I had a car crash, and I hit my head. Well, it's probably rather an understatement. The van rolled over. I knocked down a telegraph pole that then smashed into the van. I don't remember this. My father told me this, that the car had been taken to a police compound and it was completely smashed. And witnesses had said the van had rolled over. So what I remember is I was getting a bit scared because I was a bit lost, and it was raining, and there was a road diversion, and I'd only been driving for a few years, and I was a bit uneasy. And then I heard a voice, and the voice said, "This is the crash you've been expecting." And the next thing I know, I'm out of the blue van, looking down at myself, slumped in the driver's seat. I could sort of, like, as if I was seeing through the car, and I was slumped, and sort of saw the car skidding off the road. And then I was in this amazing place, and this is exactly how people describe those near-death experiences. And I don't know whether one is near death, obviously, or not. But that feeling of angelic white lights and beings, and just feeling this absolutely joyful, welcoming, wonderful space. And then a voice interrupted, and the voice said, "You're all right, love." And I sort of shot back into my body. And people say they go down a tunnel of light where they die. Well, I was just vacuumed back out of it, bang, into my body, and everything went black and dark and hurt a lot. And I was still slumped, and there was blood, and there was a policeman had got the glass out of the car, because, you know, they were trying to get to me. "Are you all right, love?" And I thought, well, I wasn't until you interrupted me. Now, you may have had an experience like that, or you may not, but again, I would like you to cast your mind today. Today is a beautiful, sunny, crisp August day, and I can see that the sky is beautiful. I would ask you to take a moment, perhaps look up at the sky and envelope yourself in a white light. And apart from feeling cold if you're not wrapped up properly, what does that feel like on an energy level? You must be warm, otherwise you'll be vibrating from shivers and not actually from the energy. But I would invite you to do that if you can take a moment. And that is a space of wonder and awe. And if you can do that at least once a day, it's a really wonderful space. So I would invite you to do that today.